everybody, welcome to season 2 of Coco and Daltz. I'm not Daltz.
And I'm not Coco.
You know you don't have to use that voice every time, right?
It's the new year.
So time for a new shtick.
It's time for a new... Oh, I'm still not Coco.
There you go. That's much better.
Is that better?
Yeah, totally.
All right.
So, as Daltz referenced, today is New Year's Day 2019.
Yeah!
Woohoo!
Here's to a good 2018 for everybody. Oh, no, wait a minute.
That was last year.
Oh, that was last year.
I'm really happy that 2018 is in the history books. That was a pretty crummy year.
Yeah, it was not great. It was
Yeah.
not great.
So today is a fresh start, a new year, a new season for your favorite pop culture and entertainment podcast,
Oh, yeah.
Coco and Daltz.
That's us, by the way.
That's totally us. So
Do we want to talk about the elephant in the room?
what would that be?
The fact that we're recording in many visual and auditory ways.
That's correct. Not only can you now listen to us in your favored podcast app, but you can also watch us on YouTube, raw and uncut.
Raw and uncut. And here's the thing. This is an incentive for you people who are just listening to the podcast in your car or commuting or while in jail. If you don't have the visual part of this, you're missing out on our dressed up set, by the way, and also the fact that we're wearing stylish hats that are thematic. Now, we're not going to talk about them on the podcast.
You're going to have to go to YouTube.
You're going to have to go to the YouTube machine to see exactly what they are, and also see what kind of art we have on our walls.
Our Times Square scroll that's around our dining room.
Right, and you can't see, but beyond the camera is the studio, where people are giving us the signal now to sort of go and talk about what we were going to talk about, but I think we're going to ignore them, and we can pretty much talk what we want to talk about.
Well, I would just like to say that if you're starting 2019 in jail, maybe this is not a fresh start.
No, it's a fresh start. You're fed up. You're like, oh man, what a 2018 I had. I'm in jail. I'm going to start anew. And the best way to do that is by listening to Coco and Daltz, the podcast.
That's right. We are life-changing.
We will change your life.
Life-affirming.
I
threw you off.
You did throw me off.
I'm sorry.
I'm not used to that sort of positive talk. So, do we want to talk about what we want to talk about?
We do.
What do we want to talk about?
Well, I've done all the intro, so why don't you start?
So last night being New Year's Eve here on the East Coast, I don't know what it was on the West Coast, but
We raged it up.
we did. As a matter of fact, you have the one clean corner of the house. Everything else is just covered with beer cans and wine bottles and
Feces.
well, yeah, we don't want to say that, but what we did to rage it up is we watched Bird Box.
We went out to dinner, and we were home by 7:45, and then we watched Bird Box.
And it was a beautiful night here in the miniature state of Connecticut. It was rainy and cold and dark.
So it kind of fit with the Bird Box. Theme is not the word I'm looking for. What? Mood?
Mood? Yeah. Exactly.
So do you want to give us a description of what Bird Box is about? Netflix claims that 45 million people have watched at least part of Bird Box since it was released on, I believe, December 21st or 22nd.
So that means that a lot of people are in dark moods over the holidays, and they're wanting some escape to get even darker. I don't know.
Yeah, why would that be?
That's
why
not
would people be in a bad mood over the holidays?
There are no angels getting wings in this
No,
flick. I can tell you that much.
It's the It's a Wonderful Life.
So what happens is, to talk about the plot a little bit, just to give the other 300 million people in the country who have not seen this movie. It stars Sandra Botox in a... Oh, I'm sorry. Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock in a role as a reluctant mother who is trying to get to safety in this society that has become riven with suicides.
Yeah.
And see, now you're thrown off.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't have much to add.
So the idea of this whole movie is Sandra Bullock saving her family in a boat on the river. So it's kind of like, and meanwhile, there's like, don't look out the window, don't go outside.
Yeah, so what happens is there's some scary monsters
Unseen.
/ an airborne virus or something, and if you look at it, you will kill yourself.
Well, what happens
So-
is your eyeballs freeze
Yeah.
into icicles, but somehow they bleed, and then you jump in front of a garbage truck.
Yeah, so the movie kind of goes back and forth between when the monsters first came and they were trying to figure out how to deal with it, and it was her and like a motley crew of people hiding out in a house trying
Not
to survive.
Motley Crue, the band.
That would have been awesome.
By the way.
Like Vince Neil and Tommy Lee,
Right.
like actually raging it up in the house. Like that would have been so sweet.
And isn't Nikki Sixx in that band too?
Yeah, Nikki Sixx.
Yeah, so-
and then the other half is like 5 years after the monsters came, and they've successfully survived, but they're
It's a juxtaposition,
but they're trying to get to a better place.
which
So-
we all are, really.
Yeah, true.
So it's very representative of everyday life.
Yeah, totally.
So there are very many conspiracy theories and or reading into the symbolism of this movie. What were some of those, Coco, that you discovered while trolling online?
Well, speaking of trolling online, great segue.
You like the way I did that?
This is why we're professionals, kids. Yeah.
We practiced this.
No, we didn't. So, so the main conspiracy theory seems to be that the monsters are social media, and the people who are infected, the monsters are like the online trolls
Ooh.
that cause you to hate yourself and your life and compare things. And also there's like an element of fake news thrown in because the virus starts in like Russia and then it jumps to
And
North
nobody
America,
believes it, yeah.
and nobody believes it. And there's a couple times like
Because all bad things start in Russia.
that's true. When it first hits, the newscaster, like of the news report they're watching, specifically says, "Don't look at social media."
Yeah.
And then John Malkovich is also in it. And after one of the people in the house they're in thinks that he's going to be able to watch the monsters through his security cams because he's not coming literally eye to eye with them. Like you've got the buffer of the screen, but then he still, spoiler alert, gets infected and kills himself. And John Malkovich literally stomps on the computer screen to break it so nobody else can.
So there's some pretty hard, fast symbolism right there.
Yeah, totally. So,
And that guy, by the way, who was watching on the video screen and was sort of sacrificing himself, should have worn the red shirt, like in Star Trek, because those guys were always the expendable guys. When they went down, when Kirk went down.
I never knew that.
Yeah, well, it's not. I don't think it's a thing, but that's just something I noticed.
Oh, okay.
So whenever you're wearing a red shirt on Star Trek, you're pretty much done.
Oh, it's a good thing I'm wearing a pink sweatshirt today.
Right,
then.
and I'm not wearing red either, so
Right, so-
we're not expendable.
Yeah.
See, now, for the people at home just listening, you didn't see that massively white fist bump that we just did.
But if you're watching us raw and uncut on YouTube, this is the additional content that we give our YouTube followers.
This is going to be a huge hit.
Yeah.
I can sense right now.
So the main conspiracy theory seems to be surrounding social media, but I also read some conspiracy theories that the story was about racism and white people are blind to it, and there's
and the people have to go. We should say the people to go outside. They wear blindfolds.
yeah, they
all
have
the
to wear
time.
blindfolds.
Yeah,
because
protective
they-
blindfolds.
Yes, and then there's another conspiracy theory that it's actually about motherhood, but I didn't.
And the
find-
environment too. We are blind to our destructive forces on the environment.
Yeah, I kind of, if I weren't going to believe the social media one, I think I'd believe the climate change one
Yeah.
because everybody's blind to it. And then once you open your eyes, well, I mean, we're all going to die in 20 years. So there you
I
go.
hope not.
Way to start 2019, kids, with
Yeah!
a ray of sunshine. Yeah.
2039, we won't be doing the podcast.
So those were some of the conspiracy theories I found. But did you find any, or is it just me doing all the heavy lifting?
No, you were doing all the heavy lifting on that one. I think I was.
You were watching Seacrest.
I think I was watching Seacrest while you were doing your heavy lifting. I was like, yeah, she'll do all the work as usual. I'll just ride on the coattails and disagree with her well-researched opinions.
and mock Jenny McCarthy speaking of Botox.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of the flick? Did you like it?
I did. I enjoyed it. This is the kind of horror movie that I like. I tend not to enjoy slasher flicks that have a lot
Right.
of gore. And don't get me wrong, there was a whole lot of death in.
Some gruesome death,
yeah,
too.
and some gruesome death.
And some
but-
gruesome driving to the grocery store with blindfolds on along the streets scattered with dead.
Yeah.
So the speed bump will never have the same meaning to me again.
So there was death, but it wasn't like a typical slasher flick where just everybody's getting body parts cut off and it's disgusting. It was more psychological because you couldn't see the monsters, and
It was very well done that way. It was.
yeah. I read they were gonna add a scene with Sandra Bullock in her dream, I think, coming face to face with the monster, but the way they described it, they said they filmed the scene, but like she was laughing, and it sounded like a Pez dispenser with a baby head or something, and it sounded really like, no, I'm really glad they didn't show the monster.
It was like one of those fuzzy guys from Monsters Inc., which you probably haven't seen.
I haven't seen
the
that.
animated thing where it just looks like a cartoon, and that would have been funny.
Yeah, I will say that when
Like a Muppet. It would have been
Yeah.
like a giant Muppet. Snuffleupagus.
How can you be afraid of the Snuffleupagus?
Exactly, with the big flashy eyelashes and
totally.
everything like that.
Yeah, I will say that when I read the book The Shining, I was very disappointed in the monster in that because it was,
Wait a minute, there's a monster in The Shining?
yeah, like
It's different from the movie?
I think so, because I think I saw the movie, so I saw the movie in college, and I was maybe under the influence of some illegal substances, so
Do tell.
I'm terrified of that movie, but then I read the book later, and
And you were not under the influence of those
no,
same
I
substances?
was on the straight and narrow, Dad, and that was aimed at my dad, not you. So,
I am a dad, but I'm not your dad.
yeah. And I was very disappointed in the monster in the book The Shining. It was very anticlimactic because it had been so built up, and then it was just kind of,
Well,
yeah,
the
like a
book
scary
is-
Snuffleupagus.
Stephen King is something else, but the movie is fantastic, right? Like, it's a thriller. Like Jack Nicholson, you can't get that kind of performance in your head when you're reading a book.
Yeah.
Right? Like come out wherever you are, whatever what's the saying when he's smashing the door down?
Oh, I don't remember.
Yeah. So it's such a memorable role that I don't remember anything about it. But but he owned that role, and like that he leaps off the screen in that movie where it's kind of hard to replicate that in book form. Although Stephen King, if anybody could do it, it was probably him.
Yeah, so I was really glad when I read what the monster was planned to be in Bird Box that they didn't do it, because then I have the experience of not being scared of the monster in The Shining. So
Well, and it's always a good idea, I think, to leave it up to people's imagination. Like that's why to me the scenes where they're in the car and they're driving over people is more horrifying than the slow pans they have of the dead people on the streets.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's just like, well, okay, the special effects, but it's in
Yeah.
your mind they're running
Yeah.
over people. It's like yee, and the sound effects.
the director, I'm probably pronouncing her name incorrectly, Suzanne Beyer. She also directed The Night Manager, that series. She did an excellent job
Yeah, it
of
was
building the
really
tension.
well. Oh, man.
Especially when they were in the car and the windows are all blacked out and you just see the GPS and it's saying like sensors or whatever, and you can see they're surrounded by the monsters and you're just like completely terrified. You're like,
Or
oh my
whatever it
God.
is.
Yeah.
It might not be monsters. It might
Right.
be your subconscious.
Yeah. So,
Or it might be, I watched Ghostbusters the other day. It might be just something you imagine to be bad, like the Stay Puft
Marshmallow
Man.
yeah, right.
Like,
Yeah.
maybe that's the monster
Yeah.
in Bird Box.
Yeah. So what did you think?
I thought it was very good. I was very impressed. I was dubious because I'm always dubious with things that are outrageously popular. And I think that because I'm just contrary, and also because I, as evidenced by our podcast, which is not very popular yet, things that are really popular aren't often good.
That's all right. But we're really, really good.
But we're at the other end of the spectrum. We're not
Right.
quite as popular, but I think we're still good. So I was dubious, but I really liked it. I love the tension. I love the juxtaposition of I thought it was just going to be the whole scene. The whole movie was going to be, having not read about it, I thought the whole movie was going to be their escape from the
yeah,
monsters. And the fact that they juxtapose it with how it happened and the origin story was mixed in there. Like it was almost like two movies
Yeah.
weaved together as one, which I really like the way that's done, because that way, if you get tired of one story, you're going to go to the other story and it's going to bring you back. So I thought it was really well done. Sandra Bullock was great in that. I'm a big fan of hers. I know I made fun of her off the top, but
her face was very distracting.
it was distracting,
Like, I'm not-
especially in the HD close-ups that
Yeah.
we are seeing these days. And Netflix is fully engaged in 4K camera work by the looks of it. So it was a little bit distracting, but at the same time, like I'm sure she's pretty without the Botox, so I don't get that. But anyway.
Well, the nose was distracting as well. That's all I'm
Right,
going to say.
right.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing it wasn't in 3D. That's all I got to say.
The performances were all Really, really
Yeah,
good.
the kids were great.
The Trevante Rhodes, who played Tom,
Right.
he was great.
He was really
Sarah
good.
Paulson was in it for the first 10, maybe 15 minutes
Who
max.
is best known as?
She was Marcia Clark in The People vs. O.J. Simpson.
She was great in that.
She played Sandra Bullock's sister in this one. She was really good in that as well.
Yep.
Like, the two of them just interplayed off each other.
They had great chemistry.
So well.
You believed that they were sisters.
Yeah, John Malkovich was great.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, John Malkovich.
John Malkovich was in it. I will also say I did B.D. Wong, who was in Law & Order Special Victims Unit. He's the guy who volunteered to watch the monsters on the video camera.
Oh, yeah, right. Yep.
And I will say I did appreciate the diversity in the cast.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I was thinking back to the late 90s when you had horror movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream, and those casts are Jennifer Love Hewitt and Neve Campbell and
Right.
Courtney Cox and Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Lots
It's
of
all-
white folks.
Yeah, young, thin, beautiful white people. And in this, you have thin, beautiful white people, but you also have a lady who's probably not so thin when she's not pregnant. And
Right.
John Malkovich was beautiful 20 years ago, and now he's
grouchy and unlikable.
yeah, now he's grouchy and unlikable, and he's like an old guy. And you've got Trevante Rhodes, who's beautiful, but then you've got various races and shapes and sizes.
Well,
it's
it
just
was
not
representative
all white
of-
people in peril.
It was
So,
very representative of the major city it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be
Sacramento.
Sacramento.
Yeah.
And I bought that was Sacramento. I
Right.
don't know much about Sacramento, but I know that it's probably not as white as it might have been portrayed in the past.
right.
It was
It's
very
not-
diverse, right?
It's not Friends, where you've got
Right.
six white people in New York and they never meet a
Well,
person of color.
And I think the idea of part of that the scene with the house, the entire story aligned with the house, was you're bringing people of diverse backgrounds together and they're reacting differently. Like the one guy was a novelist and the other person was a grocery store, or no, it's the same guy. But there was like this different, the one guy was the lead guy that you said, he was on a construction crew.
Yeah,
And there was another guy who was like a white collar guy. And it was a good mix of people brought together by this disaster. Like it was like Towering Inferno or Swarm or those
Right.
Irving Allen movies from the 70s where you have all these people thrown together and it's how they react. Like Poseidon Adventure, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the two youngest people, Lucy and Felix, they were really non-factors. Like
Yeah.
the two people you would have thought filmmakers maybe would have wanted to play bigger roles and maybe survive. Like they didn't. Not that they didn't survive. We don't know what their fates were.
We don't want to spoil it, but But were they representative of the millennial generation, thinking of themselves only, which is a stereotype out there? So there was a lot more than just Gilligan's Island here, people thrown together.
Right.
Like it was very interesting the way they brought everybody together, like you said. And the house that they were brought together in was fantastic. Like I'm sorry about the disaster, but I would have loved to have lived in that house.
Yeah, that was some craftsman, like, beautiful realness going on there.
That kitchen was the size of our house, I think. So it was fantastic.
I will say, I wish they would have shown how Sandra Bullock and Trevante Rhodes made it from that house to the wilderness where they were holed up 5 years later.
There's a bit of a jump cut there.
Yeah, I wish we could have seen how they made their escape, but that's a minor quibble.
Yeah.
My other minor quibble, and one of the ladies I work with said this as well, they have to be blindfolded when they go outside so that they don't see the monster and die. And Sandra Bullock and the two kids are running through the woods and they do trip and fall, but they do really well for being blindfolded. Like she's rowing down the river and everything's good. And I'm like, yeah, I come to bed after you're in bed and you've got the light out and I'm worthless. Like I'm feeling the wall and I'm still tripping over a dog toy or something. Like I'm not blindfolded, but
that's a very good point. They did very well. And how many of us would put a blindfold on and run in a forest?
Yeah, I would.
Like I know you're fleeing a monster and you're doing whatever you can.
The confines of the story, the parameters of the story, you have to do this.
You have to do it, but at the same time, they were very successful in. But and there were some scenes where you could see a little bit through the blindfolds. Like they did a very good job, I thought, of like when there was a suspenseful moment and Sandra Bullock was coming up to something and there was the noise around it and there was the wind blowing, signifying that the monster guy or the psychosis or whatever it was around. They focused on her.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting because that put you in her blindfold is like, oh, she can't see anything, and we can't see what is around her either.
Right.
So it wasn't like the camera was flipping and you could see the wind blowing very much. Like it was very much her and then the blindfold, and it was very, very good at building the tension and building the suspense.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd give it a solid recommend.
It was a good start to the new year, even though we watched it yesterday. Even though we watched it in 2018.
But it was over 30 minutes before 2019 started. So we closed out 2018 on a high note. How about that?
We finished it when it was 2019 in Newfoundland.
That's right. It was already everywhere else in the world except for here, basically. It was already 2019.
Right.
So it counts.
Right.
Just like it's always 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Right. Or noon, depending on your parameters.
Yeah, that's true. So
are we done?
Yeah, you got anything else to add?
No, I thought it was well worth it. It was a good journey.
So there is a little bit of uproar because Netflix is claiming that 45 million people have watched it, and somebody ran the numbers and said that if each one of those 45 million people had bought a movie ticket, if this were in theaters, the 7-day total for Bird Box would be like $412 million.
Oh, wow.
Which would beat the 7-day total of The Force Awakens, which was only $390.
Oh.
So
that's dubious, though.
Yeah, I mean, like I said last night, Hollywood math has always been fuzzy.
Well, yeah, and it's like, how do they really count the receipts in the theaters anyway? Like, I mean, they get results that quickly?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. You know, I've been to some of the theaters where they don't even have change in the drawer for like, a 10 when you buy popcorn or something like that. So like, there's no way you're getting instant results on receipts, but
I don't know how they do that.
But the point is well taken. I think that it was very popular, very well done, and very well received. And we'll see now, maybe there'll be a Bird Box 2.
Well, now that they did make it to the...
But you're giving it away.
I mean, where are they going to go for Bird Box 2? Oh, well, speaking of, maybe this could just be like an anthology movie type thing. Like, because I just read that True Detective Season 3 is beginning on January the 13th.
Oh, yeah?
And that's the one with Mahershala Ali. Speaking of Trevante Rhodes, those two were in Moonlight, which won the Best Picture Oscar 2 or 3 years ago. So, yeah, that's coming up. So maybe Bird Box will be like an anthology type thing.
Like Stranger Things 3, which is coming up in this year as well.
Yeah. So,
which I'm not watching. I'm not watching it.
I'm watching it on my own, but it's on a short leash, so I might not finish the season if it sucks. But.
Well, and speaking of which, there's one scene in the Botox movie that we just watched, Blue Box. What's it called? Bird Box?
Blue Box. Botox. We'll get there eventually.
It's the end of the podcast.
Believe it or not, we didn't actually have a whole lot to drink last night.
No, actually, that's true. So there's one scene in there where there's drawings of the monster.
Yeah.
And they looked like drawings of that the guys were doing in Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
There were some similarities there, and I was wondering what was going on there.
I mean, they're all Netflix productions, so call back.
Right.
Cross-promotion.
Right. Maybe they were saving money and they used the same drawings.
I can't believe one of the kids wasn't 11. Maybe 11 could have come and vanquished the monsters.
Too old.
In
Aged
Big
out.
Sack. Yeah.
Aged
that's
out.
true.
Yeah, they looking at the kids now, they better hurry up and get all these seasons done because they're not going to be 12 forever or whatever.
Right, they're going to be middle-aged fathers of 2 by
like
the time.
with a mustache and a deep voice. I can't believe my video game doesn't work.
Space Invaders sucks. Well, on that
note, for another week, and it's the first podcast of 2019, the first video cast ever of Coco and Daltz.
And the first episode of Season 2 of Coco and Daltz.
Yes!
Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for being with us on this journey.
Thank you to all our advertisers who have helped pay for this luxurious studio, helped us with the engineering crew that you can't see because they're behind the camera.
And we'll always take more advertisers. So if you would like to get a hold of us to discuss that giving us money thing.
What's our email address again?
cocoanddaltz@gmail.com.
And one of these days we will check that.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I checked. You could also slide into our DMs on our Facebook page, which is...
I don't know what that means.
Coco and Daltz, all one word.
So for another episode of Coco and Daltz, I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Daltz.